Cameron Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the Foreign Secretary for the gravity which he's applying to this important topic. 1 week ago, the Foreign Secretary told me that he had huge confidence in our ability to defend our Middle Eastern assets from Iranian strikes. But within 2 days, 2 strategic assets were vandalised by a couple of civilians on an e-scooter at RAF Brize Norton. Does the Foreign Secretary recognise that the UK must not follow Trump into Netanyahu's war with Iran when force protection is inadequately resourced at home?
Well, I'm very grateful to the honourable gentleman for his service in the RAF, and can I refer him to a statement that the Armed Services Minister will shortly be making in the House about the security of our sovereign bases.
I think so.
Speaker, just a week ago we were here calling for de-escalation due to so many civilian deaths, but in the last week we have seen an escalation with so many more civilian deaths in Israel, in Gaza, in Iran. We know it's much easier to get into a conflict than to conclude it. If the justification for military action is now a nuclear weapons programme and being a threat to your neighbours, how many other nations fit that category? Isn't North Korea another country with an even more advanced nuclear weapons programme? Where is Article 51, the UN Convention, now in terms of justification?
Well, my honourable friend's question goes to the heart of why it would be a travesty for Iran to withdraw from the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and why we must work to ensure that Iran does not become a North Korea. It must never have a nuclear weapons programme, and we will do everything to stop that happening.
David Simmons.
I'm grateful, Mr. Speaker. The family of my constituent, Katie Solomon, have been in touch to share their fears about her as she shelters from Iranian attacks in Israel. And my constituent, Mehdi Mosleh, has told me about how his life in the UK started as a refugee from the Iranian regime. So can the Foreign Secretary tell my constituents in the House why, given Iran's record, he is finding it so difficult to follow the Prime Minister in welcoming the actions of our allies in seeking to reduce the risks posed by the Iranian nuclear programme?
Well, can I say to the honourable gentleman that he will recall that in representing my constituency in Tottenham, I have the Stamford Hill area of London, which is the home of many in our Orthodox Jewish community, many of whom are in Israel as we speak, sheltering too in their bunkers. So the picture he paints is one that I recognise, and it's why I'll do everything I can to work with them and protect them.
Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my right honourable friend for his statement. Dozens of people from my Hendon constituency have been stranded in Israel and Iran. I thank the Foreign Secretary for his hard work on this issue, and it's good news that the first flight has already occurred. Can he say more about the timeframes for potential future flights, and also say more on what is being done to support those looking to leave Israel by land, borders or by sea?
I updated the House about our rapid response teams that are working in Israel and at borders for those who are able to journey to the land borders in Jordan and Egypt to leave. We have a flight in the air as we speak, and I expect that there will be further flights in the coming days, but it does depend on airspace and how those days look.
Lincoln Chop.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Foreign Secretary for a statement in which he says that he's been crystal clear with the regime in Tehran. I hope he's been a lot clearer with them than he has been with the House today, because I'm going to give it one more go, because I genuinely don't understand why he can't answer this question. Does His Majesty's government support or oppose US military action against Iran at the weekend?
His Majesty's government will continue to work with our closest ally, as I was last week in Washington, D.C.
Mr. Scott Harper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I do thank the Foreign Secretary for his energy he's invested in de-escalation because it's the only moral route out of this conflict. And I thank him also for reassuring us that UK forces aren't involved and not giving up for the plight facing ordinary Gazans.
There's 90 million people in Iran. Just under 10 million of them are in Tehran. There's reports of many of them trying to leave the country, and this will be made worse by the reports around the speculation around regime change. There's also reports that Turkey and Pakistan might be closing their borders to refugees. Is this something he's keeping a watchful eye on, and has he discussed it with our international partners?
Well, I'm very grateful to the honourable friend for the question, and it was why I spoke to our ambassadors and teams across the region this morning, because I recognise that this is a worrying and stressful time in all of those areas, which is why my central message and task is to de-escalate. We need more light and less heat.
If I heard the Foreign Secretary correctly, he said that the UK would act if Iran sought to block the Strait of Hormuz. Did he mean act militarily? And then under what other conditions would he consider military action? And what would he say if the Americans turned to this government and asked them for support in any military adventure to do with this conflict?
It would be quite wrong for me from this dispatch box to get into eventualities and operational matters at this time. But be reassured that all contingencies are in place to keep our people and to work with our allies to keep the region safe.
Adam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The most in-depth study ever conducted on the casualties of the war on so-called terror was conducted by Brown University in America. They found that directly or indirectly, over 4.5 million people lost their lives. 4.5 million people partially lost their lives because of what was voted for in this House. So can the Minister agree with me that the only resolution to this conflict is through diplomacy? And can he assure the House he will not follow the previous Labour government and the previous Labour Prime Minister Tony Blair's mantra when it comes to America bombing Middle Eastern country is with you whatever, and lead this country and the world into the abyss?
Well, I can restate, as I have throughout this afternoon, that diplomacy is in the way, and I can remind him that our government and successive governments have learned from the Chilcot inquiry.
Speaker, why should the House of Commons and the country that we represent not be entitled to know whether their government supports or regrets the American action? And doesn't equivocation in that issue bring succour to those we say must be robbed, quite properly, of their nuclear potential?
I think the people of Britain are entitled to know that we were not involved in this action, that we work for diplomacy and de-escalation. That is why I was sitting in the White House last week. It's why I was in Geneva on Friday, and it was why I was at a COBRA meeting and making a round of calls to allies and partners to de-escalate at this time yesterday.
Sarah Poach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Foreign Secretary, is he able to explain to the House whether the United States felt unable to use the Diego Garcia base and have to refuel in a highly dangerous operation 3 times because of that, because of your deal that you did with the Mauritians that would then tell the Chinese, that would then tell the Iranians?
The Honourable Lady has got to get off social media and has got to get some help. Has got to get some help because she's swallowing conspiracy theories that should not be repeated in this House.
Ellie John.
Answer the question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Iranian regime has long been a threat to peace, democracy and human rights. But the unilateral, illegal and dangerously provocative Israeli and now American attacks have made a tense situation extremely perilous and are completely outside international law. It's therefore deeply concerning to hear the Secretary of State echoing the talking points of Netanyahu and Trump, instead of standing up for those principles, clearly condemning the illegality of these bombings and unequivocally ruling out the UK being dragged into any military action supporting such illegal action.